9 days before Lasha Talakhadze set the heaviest competition total of all time, extending his own personal record by 6 kilos and furthering his lead over the great Leonid Taranenko by 8 kilos, he hit the heaviest training hall total of all time. And this is that session. Now, the day before this was the first time I'd actually ever seen Lasha in person. He had muscle snatched 130 kilos and done a few pulls upwards of 200 kilos. But when Lasha walked into the training hall on this day, every athlete in that hall was aware of where he was in his workout at all times. It was like he was the center of the training hall solar system. And after every rep that every other athlete hit, their heads would turn towards him, his platform, his training session. It tends to be that for Lasha, his heaviest training session is always 9 days out from the competition. And so on this day, we knew that as the day went by, he was going to turn up at some point and really put on a show. At his last competition in Batumi for the European Championships, he'd snatched 207 and he'd clean jerked 250 for his heaviest training session. A really incredible performance, but even so, there was no way of knowing just how special this training session was going to be, and that he was going to lift 8 kilos more than he had done in Batumi. Now, to make things even more intense, Team China had just turned up to train at the exact same time, occupying the platforms opposite him and some of the platforms beside him, which meant that at the same time as Lasha was going for these enormous lifts, you had Liu Xiaojun attempting 200 kilos in the clean and jerk just a few platforms over, and you had Shi Ziyong pause front squatting 230 kilos right in front of Lasha. The tension between the Georgian and the Chinese camp was so great that I remember the next day, Li Dayin and Shi Ziyong and several others of the Chinese national team were all training on the platforms that the Georgians were supposed to be lifting on. So when Lasha and Georgi Asanidze turned up, there was this awkward and very palpable confrontation as Georgi Asanidze forced the Chinese athletes, despite them being halfway through their workouts, into the surrounding platforms. And so when Lasha does this 140 kilo lift, what you don't realize is that there are these glaring eyes of the Chinese national team, and to some extent I wonder if he hit that 140 kilos just to continue asserting his dominance as the greatest weightlifter in that room, which he really is. And this is a question that I've been asked many times. Who is the greatest weightlifter alive? And the only athlete doing anything that has never been done before is Lasha Talakhadze. As incredible as the Liu Xiaojuns, the Li Dayins, Shi Ziyongs of the world are, they are still lifting in the shadow of the Vardanians and Solodovs and Blagoevs of the past. And so it is for that reason really that I do believe that Lasha Talakhadze is the greatest weightlifter on earth right now. And I also suspect that it won't be long before we start having the debate as to whether he is the greatest of all time. With his performance 9 days later, Lasha moved himself in the Sinclair list of all time up into the number 11 spot, dislodging the super heavyweight Alexander Kurlovich. I fully believe that by the time the 2020 Olympics have come and gone, Lasha will have moved himself up into and solidified himself as one of the greatest in the top 10 Sinclairs of all time. Now this 200 kilo snatch was insane to watch, and the heaviest snatch I've ever seen in person up until that point. But what happened after was maybe even more ridiculous, as the video will now show. Now, almost as soon as I had turned my camera on, I saw Lasha turn straight back around and walk right back to the bar and take it for a second rep. Holy shit. Now, if we count this as a double, which for a super you almost have to because there was only about 15 seconds between reps, this is the heaviest training hall double ever. When Lasha's team started loading 210, the whole training hall again noticed, and it almost felt like everybody from then on was just timing their next lift so that they would be able to sit down and watch this 210. And this 210 snatch is equal to the heaviest ever training hall snatch, but no human has ever made it look as easy as this. I mean, historically, a 210 kilo snatch is a lift that almost always wins major competitions. It's the kind of lift that the greatest supers ever occasionally hit in historic moments when the stars align. It isn't the kind of lift that you program in for 2 singles like Lasha does here and hit with such ease and conviction. That is arguably the easiest looking 210 kilo snatch of all time that any human has ever hit. And seeing that in person, and as you guys can tell from this angle, I mean, I'm a meter and a half, a yard and a half away from Lasha at this point, just watching the most incredible training hall session of all time. Now, after the snatching was over, it became clear that Lasha had injured his wrist, or that he had some kind of nagging injury. He wrapped up his wrists even more than he had done before. They brought some ice over for him. In fact, after the entire session as well, after the clean and jerks, he had to ice his wrist for a long time. And we could kind of see during this training session, as he dropped bars from overhead in the clean and jerk, he just flinched ever so slightly. But even so, he was still able to hit what became the heaviest clean and jerk and total in the training hall ever. Now, just as we watched Lasha warming up in the clean and jerk with 70 kilos, I want to put how incredible this total that Lasha's about to hit, his 210 kilo snatch, 255 kilo clean and jerk, and 465 kilo total, into perspective. So Lasha would have won the Olympics with this total in 1984, 1988, 1992, 1996, even in 2008 against Matthias Steiner, 2012 against Salimi. And had it not been for the fact that he had won the 2016 Olympics, he would have also won with this total. So we really aren't watching a normal training session here at all. This is a performance that would be the greatest performance of any 4-year Olympic quad at any given competition. Now, I don't know if you guys saw it on the last lift, but you can see just as Lasha drops a bar from the jerk position, there's a slight bit of flinching going on with his wrist. He might do it again here at 200. Yeah, just a little bit of pain that he was feeling, and we were all kind of aware of that, and just sort of silently praying that it wasn't going to affect the top lift that he was going to attempt. I mean, at this point, we didn't know what he was going to go for. He'd done 250 at the European Championships 6 months earlier. He'd just snatched 3 kilos more than he had done in that heavy training session in Batumi. So we were really hoping for something special during this session. One of the things I really like as well about watching Lasha is just how involved Georgi Asenidze, his coach, who you can see crouched down, pushing that 10 kilo plate out of the rack, just how involved he is with Lasha's training. I mean, he is so much more than just a technical and programming coach. You can see the way that he interacts with Lasha. He is as much a psychological coach as he is anything else. He talks to Lasha after every single lift. He is just so involved with everything to do with Lasha. It's amazing to see, more so than any other coach that I saw in the training hall across all countries, across all 2 weeks whilst I was in Thailand. And of course, this now was the moment where we were waiting to see what was going to be loaded. 240 kilos was a weight that we knew that he would do. It was whatever he went for after that.
This might be the heaviest training clean and jerk of all time. Training haul.
And for him to load 255, I mean, the most we had ever seen from him in competition internationally at this point was 260 kilos. So he's just 5 kilos below. The most he's ever hit on film is 264 from the Georgian Nationals last year. So 255 is 96%-ish of the most that we have ever seen from this guy. But the difference with Lasha is when he puts the weight on the bar, in competition and training, there is no thought of, is he going to make this? The only thing you think is, now Lasha is going to show us this lift that we've been waiting for him to do. When other weightlifters put a heavy weight on the bar, in competition, you wonder whether they're going to make it. With Lasha, we're just waiting for him to put the numbers on the bar that we know that he can do. That's why Lasha is so historically amazing. That's why Lasha is the greatest super heavyweight of all time. That's why he has snatched and totaled more than any human ever. And that's why at some point soon, he's also going to clean and jerk more than the legendary 266 by Leonid Taranenko. It's only a matter of time.